Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. We know that Russia has the advantage on the front lines, but even now Ukraine has some of the successful counterattacks, like for example it happened yesterday in Biligorivka, the Liman direction. As you can see from this military map, Ukrainians gained the control over the very important heights, including the part of the Biligorivka village itself. I would say that Biligorivka is kind of the iconic place because there was the big ambushment of the Russian convoy, the first big recorded on the drone cameras. Yeah, obviously in the eastern front lines before Ukraine ambushed lots of the Russian convoys in Kiev region, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, but here Russians tried to cross the Syrsky Donets river and it didn't happen. For a single attack they lost dozens of the armored vehicles and hundreds of the troops. Nevertheless, Russians managed to occupy Biligorivka and this settlement goes from one hand to another several of the times. For now, Ukrainian army returned it under control. Fantastic news, because those very important heights will allow Ukraine to keep control over surrounding area. So there are some of the bright moments even now happening for Ukraine, and I always start my videos from the good news. However, if we see the picture in general, Russia still has the advantage, and for now maybe it could be even profitable for Ukraine to sign some sort of the peace deal, but we need robust security guarantees. Like for example NATO membership, but with Donald Trump presidency coming, we face the uncertainty for Ukraine. As you probably know, I use the ground news as one of the main sources to get the information for the daily updates about the situation in Ukraine, and not only. I really believe in what ground news is doing, and they've also been a long-term sponsor of this channel, so they make this content possible. That's why I encourage you to subscribe for the ground news using my personal link ground.news/Dennis. And they came out with an awesome new feature. It is called Daily Briefing. It gives you the bird's eye view on a topic from different perspectives. I guess you know that Ukraine faces uncertain future under Trump's presidency. Well, here we have the ground summary, what happened, what does it mean, the common ground behind this topic, and different perspectives from pro-Ukrainian supporters and America First advocates. Relative to the United States support of Ukraine, approach to end the war and US-Russia relations. Also here you can click view all sources and you'll have all of the articles available relative to the main topic with the factuality report and source origins. Well, you know guys, after all we have lots of the speculations relative to the future Trump strategy. Many experts, politicians and influencers start to publish their own predictions, but for now it's early to say by 100%. What we know that the strategy will change, but whether it will be positive for Ukraine, I hope so. If you subscribe with my link ground.news/Dennis, you'll get 50% off Vantage plan. That's what I personally use to get the unlimited access to all of the features of the platform. This is their biggest sale of the year, so you may subscribe for it or give it to someone you know. I think that the team of the ground news are doing fantastic and important job. It is not a big mainstream media corporation, so they rely on our subscriptions and our support. So I hope you check my personal link in the video description just below. Ground News, thank you so much for sponsoring this video. Let's continue with the good news for Ukraine. So Ukraine launched the massive drone strike on the Russian infrastructure this morning. Russia has reported that they've shut down around 70 of the drones. And definitely some of the drones were shut down, like for example this one, looted drone, was hit in the skies. By the way, it happened in the Moscow region and some of the debris really went into the residential area. That's why the fire was reported in the local households. Again, it is the response of Ukraine on the recent Russian strikes on civilian infrastructure of Ukraine. Like for example, it happened in Odessa recently, where Russia hit several of the residential multi-story buildings. In Odessa, Russia uses the Shahed drones and they launch those from Crimea, occupied territory of Ukraine. The drones are coming from the sea, so they are leaving just a small gap for Ukrainian air defense to work in shutting down those drones. I would say that from all of the big cities, Odessa is the most vulnerable because of that feature. Well, maybe Kharkiv as well, because it's very close to the Russian border and Russia drops lots of the aviation gliding bombs on the territory of the city. So let's go to the aftermath of the Kabooms which Ukrainian drones caused to the Russian army. Those are the Russian army barracks placed in the Rostov region. As you can see, they're just devastated. I wonder if the Russian soldiers were inside of those barracks by the moment of the Kaboom. The barracks belong to the Russian training facility. There are many of those and some of them completely gone. However, at the same time, we do not see the traces of the Russian soldiers lying on the ground. Maybe they were removed just not to film them on the video, or maybe the training camp was empty by the time because there are constant rotations. The Russian soldiers are coming for the training, then they are going to fight in Ukraine, and then coming next, and there could be some of the gap. For now, the real evidence that they were for sure the Russian soldiers in those barracks are absent. But what we know for sure that the last night Ukraine hit a very important Russian military base, which was actually a supply hub in the Bryansk region. According to the recent reports, the fire continued there even now. It means that Ukraine tries to hit some of the Russian infrastructure and logistic chains. As you know, soldiers win battles, but logistics wins wars. Also, there were Kabooms reported in the military airfield of the occupied Mariupol. Well, we have the report about it from the local groups and Telegram channels and also that military bloggers, but we don't have the visual evidence to confirm. Russia is not using this particular airbase for their aircraft like Sukhoi-25 because the runway is destroyed there, but helicopters could be placed there. And more about the drone attack in the Moscow region, Russia already reported it as the most massive Ukrainian drone strike on Moscow. As usual, Russians claim that they've shut down everything, but there was the case that the commercial aircraft nearly hit the drone during its approach to Sheremetyevo Moscow airport. The Russian sources are telling about the Airbus A320 of the Uzbekistan Airways. As it is reported, pilots saw at least 3 of the drones and nearly hit them during the approach. After the case, the airport was closed for the operation. Again, it's hard to say whether this story is truthful because the information is coming from the Russian sources. Well, if this information is truthful, I think that Russian aviation authorities should have closed down the airspace around Moscow because of the drone attack. Well, obviously, Ukrainian side is not looking for the escalation into the other countries like Uzbekistan. Ukrainians respond to the Russian strikes on its cities, including the capital city of Kyiv, so Ukraine has absolute right to strike Russia and Moscow in this case. So the airlines which continue to perform their flights to Moscow should consider those risks as well. And they also should work with the Ukrainian and Russian authorities to minimize the risks for their passengers. The risks for the commercial aviation transportation are there. Well, luckily this incident, if it really was, didn't involve into the accident or air crash. Oh my god, what is happening in Russia? Why do those women are wearing the foil hats? It is the cringe out of cringe, and it is real, it is not fake. Moreover, those are the teachers of the local school. So what forced them to wear those foil hats? Well, actually it was done by one of the prankers, who sent the official looking-like letters from the United Russia Party, calling the schools to propel the patriotic morale by creating those foil hats in the form of the old Russian helmets. For example, this is the elite helmet of the Russian knight, so Rus knight by the time. And this is the average helmet of the Russian soldier of the Middle Ages. So by doing so, the Russian pranker shows that there are no borders for the Russian patriotic insanity. The foil patriotic hats, it is something. The Telegraph says that Russia developed the new gliding bombs with a jet engine. So it's some sort of the mix between the gliding bomb and the cruise missile. The engine is not that powerful, it just keeps to increase the gliding distance, which in this case might be up to 120 kilometers. That's a lot. The average gliding bombs Russia uses right now has the range up to 70 kilometers. So the jet engine gives the boost of 80% of the distance. Potentially it may give the Russian Air Force the opportunity to launch those bombs from the very far distance from Ukrainian territory. For the last months, Russia lost at least 3 of their Sukhoi-34 aircraft, and they are looking for the possible solutions. Well, for now, Russia produced not many of those gliding bombs, but Russia still has the capabilities to reinforce the production because it's not high-tech production actually. Russia is experimenting with the gliding bombs a lot. At first, the Ukrainian side obtained the JDAMs, but Russians took that technology and introduced vastly into their army. I would say that the Russian aviation gliding bombs are even more decisive on the front lines than, for example, HIMARS systems, because the aviation bombs bring the most devastation possible. No any artillery system could be compared with aviation bomb. So again, for Ukraine, it is crucial to get rid of the Russian military airfields, of the Russian airplanes in general, and now Ukraine may only do it with the help of the long-range drones. The most effective and the most popular Russian vehicle for supplies is the Russian Bhan van. Indeed, you can put lots of the things inside, and it has kind of the good off-road capabilities. But it has its own downside, and here, as you can see, Bhanka was already damaged, not by Ukrainian drones, but by Bhanka itself, by corrosion, which is basically caused by the poor production of the vehicle. Production production quality, I mean. As you can see, Russians tried to deal with it, but it didn't help. So if that continues for a while, Bukhanka will be destroyed by the weather, and the price for Bukhanka is more than 1.5 million rubles, $14,000 for the new vehicle, and you see the quality is terrible. Recently, there were some of the remarks from the politicians who follow the Russian narratives. Viktor Orban started to play the role of the good cop. He said that the Ukrainians chose the way to fight and they fought heroically, and it's up to them to decide whether to continue or not. He also said that he never told the Ukrainians what to do in the context of the war with Russian Federation, but was ready to help in neighboringly way. Well, before, Orban said many times that Ukraine should follow the peace deal, and Orban personally propelled the peace plan made by China and Brazil. Not even the Russians' plan, but that plan is also not good for Ukraine. But Slovak Prime Minister Fico started to play the role of the bad cop, and he even accused Zelensky that he doesn't want to stop the war. He said that he saw it in his eyes. So those politicians are talking about Ukraine all the time, but Ukraine is not decisive power here if we speak about the front lines, if we speak about the ceasefire. What Ukraine does, that it defends its territory. The attacking part is the Russian side, and all of the negotiations should be based on pushing the Russian side for the ceasefire, not the Ukrainian one. Just look for a couple of days at the Kurakhove direction how fast the Russian army propels. Yeah, we're gonna speak about the military map update, but something should be done with Putin for him first of all to stop. So for sure Russians continue to advance in these areas, while their goal is to try to encircle this entire area, I think to avoid the main battle for Kurakhove. They continue to attack Kurakhove, but with just limited forces, and so far their attacks are not that successful. But also according to the recent information, Russians managed to cross the river in this place. They advance from this direction and the fighting is ongoing in the suburbs of Kurakhove. There was also the information that Russians managed to break through Ukrainian defense in Sosnivka, and the fight is ongoing further from Sosnivka to the west. I don't have the proofs for it right now, I mean the visual confirmation, but there were some of the reports from Ukrainian and the Russian side. If you look at the 3D military map, you will see that Russia took the lower ground in this village. But in the nearby future, they would have to cross this river and climb higher to the hills. Honestly, I don't think that they'll do it really fast. After those hills, they have the descent to that area, so it will be much easier for them. The build analytic Yulian Ryobke also says that there could be a breakthrough of the Russian army. He said, so far unconfirmed reports of a massive Russian breakthrough. Yes, what is unconfirmed is not happening, I would say. So here Russia is going to reach Andriivka, it's roughly 10 kilometers away from Sosnivka, and also Russia may propel fast from the south. We also have the confirmation of the Russian army advancement towards Kurakhove from the other sources. And recently Russians took this part of the land not far away from Kurakhove. This area is even bigger than Kurakhove itself, but we are speaking about the fields, which is much easier to take for Russia than the settlement. Here you may spot the Ukrainian defense line, which is not that robust, and partially it has already been taken by Russians. 100% Ukraine has the crisis in defense lines and also in Ukrainian military command. I am openly speaking about the Ukrainian General Commander Syrsky and his incompetent attitude towards Ukrainian volunteers. There was an attempt done by Syrsky to take Ukrainian biggest volunteer Sternenko to Ukrainian army to fight in the trenches. Sternenko was able to organize the biggest volunteer fund if we speak about the FPV drones and some of the surveillance drones. Obviously, with the donation from the ordinary people, he supplies Ukrainian army even more than the Ukrainian government with FPV drones. Almost half of the FPV drones are there in Ukrainian army because of his fund. Yes, you may say that every volunteer may do this job, but Sternenko has its own social media, which is really popular. His YouTube channel counts 2 million subscribers, and now some of the forces affiliated with General Syrsky trying to take him to the front lines and to basically kaput his fund. They want to exchange 50% of Ukrainian FPV drones for one guy with Kalashnikov. The more information about this case I published on my Telegram channel. There I translated the post of Sternenko himself, and I gave my own opinion about this entire drama, which is actually the terrible one. Then Zaluzhny left his position. I told you that Syrsky is not that guy who is competent enough to handle this war. And he started to push Chernenko because Chernenko on his YouTube channel started to say about the issues in Ukrainian army, that there are some of the reforms needed immediately. Basically the same stuff that I'm speaking sometimes on this channel. And for that Chernenko was followed, and now this guy wants him to fight on the front lines. Guys, if you know how deep that rabbit hole really is, I just don't want to tell lots of the stuff which is happening there. But definitely the stories like that are lowering the morale not just of Ukrainian army, but of Ukrainian population in general. Well, luckily Chernenko received the huge support from Ukrainian military brigades, from Ukrainian volunteers, and there is the huge hype wave to support him, and first of all Ukrainian army, which continue to receive the drones. Russia again intensified its attacks on Ukrainian-controlled territory in the Kursk region, with the heavy losses, but it seems like they managed to expand the gray area from the north. France is going to send more of the Scalp cruise missiles for Ukraine. How many of those? Well, different sources say different numbers. Also, they want to transfer more of the Mistral air defense systems. It is absolutely clear that for the next couple of months Ukraine will obtain more military support, but what will happen after it, no one knows. But after all, I expect that the support from the United States will be limited very soon, and we have the confirmation about it from Donald Trump's son, who shares this kind of the video. A video with the said Zelensky that was recorded and he went to the United States. He wrote, "You are 38 days from losing your allowance," which is actually the Lulu. Here we speak about not Zelensky, but about the financing of Ukrainian army. If Donald Trump wants to get himself into the situation which was even worse for the United States withdrawal from Afghanistan, well, it might happen if the United States of America will completely freeze the military support of Ukraine. You know, guys, when the war had started in 2022, the collective West was sure that Ukraine will last for several weeks. But because Ukrainians showed that they managed to defend themselves, Ukraine started to obtain military support. So the idea in general is not to give up regardless of what is happening in the United States politics. And the current situation shows that you cannot rely on anyone, that only your friend is your army. The rest are the partners who follow their own interests, or the enemies who are trying to take your country. And if you do have some of the unique weaponry, like for example nuclear missiles, nuclear bombs, plus the airplanes to deliver them elsewhere, do not give up that weaponry, because it is your only protection. That conclusion we may take from this war, and Ukraine needs to hold and wait for the process of the big disintegration which will happen in Russia. Why it will happen? Well, I'm gonna tell you in my tomorrow's video. Now, my friends, please don't forget to check out the link for the ground news, which you may find in the video description just below. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.